An interview with Joe Biden that aired on ABC News on Friday apparently did nothing to allay the fears of Americans, including his fellow Democrat politicians, that the president's health is good enough for him to run for re-election in 2024. Here is part of the interview with George Stephanopoulos.
The American people have been watching, yet their concerns about your age and your health are growing. So that's why I'm asking, to reassure them, would you be willing to have the independent medical evaluation?
Watch me there's a lot of time left in this campaign. It's over 125 days.
So the answer, the right answer right now is no, you don't want to do that, right?
Well, I've already done it.
Right. Let me ask you a tougher, more personal question. Are you sure you're being honest with yourself when you say you have the mental and physical capacity to serve another 4 years?
Yes, I am, because George, the last thing I want to do is not be able to meet that.
The interview lasted about 22 minutes. One of the first of a handful of Democrat members of Congress who have called for Joe Biden to drop out of the 2024 presidential race was Texas Congressman Lloyd Doggett.
I can't tell you how many people sought me out at neighborhood parades to say they supported the statement I made and that they think it's really important that we get another choice.
Doggett went on to say his constituents are worried Joe Biden is not the strongest candidate the Democrats can put forth. Mike?
A new report released Wednesday reveals the Biden White House employs 152 staff members, more than former President Trump in his final year in office. The numbers show Biden's White House staff has reached heights not seen since 1971 during Richard Nixon's administration, according to Adam Andrzejewicz. OpenTheBooks.com, Biden's staff costs taxpayers nearly $61 million annually.
Payroll is the largest in modern presidential history. He's got 565 employees on staff. No one in this 50-year period over the course of the last 5 decades, all the way back to Richard Nixon in 1971, no president had ever employed more than 500. Biden's headcount is 565 for $61 million.
Since Joe Biden took office, the White House staff payroll has ballooned. During Biden's first 3 years in office, over 40,000 employees were added to the federal payroll across 123 agencies, not including the Defense Department, Intelligence Services, and the Postal Service. In addition, the administration's turnover rate is a whopping 77%. Joe Biden's constant denial of his debate disaster and his failing abilities continues to distress Democrats. His recent ABC News interview on Friday only fanned the flames. Here is ABC's Martha Raddatz discussing how the president appears to now be depending on only a few key advisors and one angry spouse.
The president is talking to a lot of people, but he appears to be listening to a very tight circle.
A very tight circle, and administration officials I have spoken to said that very tight inner circle is telling them he can win, that he needs to keep going. This, of course, includes his wife, Jill, who they said is lashing out at those who want him to get out of the race.
But perhaps it's Megyn Kelly's comment on social media that sums up what much of the nation is thinking. She posted this: "I'm genuinely sad and angry over what these people around him are doing to Joe Biden. He deserves better than to go out like this. The answer is to let him retire with some dignity, not to keep forcing the critically wounded racehorse to run more." Greg.
Leftists see a resurgence of the diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology if Vice President Kamala Harris can wrestle the presidency from Joe Biden. The Blaze posted a story featuring this video showing a pastor preaching to his congregation to put Joe Biden in the past and promote his VP to the highest office in the land.
Because if this happens, we can reclaim DEI. We can reclaim critical race theory and put our content back in textbooks to teach the truth about a racist history in America. If this happens, we can reclaim the Supreme Court, because right now they control the Supreme Court and they will put 2 more judges on it to make sure we go back to the plantation.
Jason Whitlock and Delano Squires from The Blaze called out the minister's DEI sermon, with Whitlock saying a candidate's worldview, mentality, and life values are what denotes a worthy candidate, not race or gender.
And so if I had a choice between choosing a black woman or someone whose lead identity was I'm a Christian and I'm going to interpret the world through this Christian lens, I'm going to choose that person.
The video clip shared from a church service made no mention of Jesus, redemption, or God's grace in connection with the statements about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Let's talk with the Mass Exodus Movement founder, host of the Keisha King podcast. Keisha, welcome back to Victory News.
Thanks for having me.
So this morning, Biden sent a letter to House Democrats telling them he's staying in the 24 race, but the calls for him to step down are rising. What's your reaction to that Houston bishop's Sunday message on Kamala Harris and the presidency?
You know, when I saw that, it hits close to home for me because that is what God freed me of, race idolatry. And so what that so-called pastor is doing, he's promoting everything that is anti-God. DEI is anti-God. Critical race theory is anti-God. And this notion, you know, about the Supreme Court, these people, they want abortion. They want abortion. And he's a pastor pushing for these things. He's a pastor saying, you know, as a Black person, like that's why you should be elevated, not because of your biblical principle beliefs. Why would you even support someone like a Biden-Harris administration, knowing that they are for everything that the Bible is against? Okay. And so it makes no sense to me, and it's heresy in my book.
Okay, Senator Marco Rubio from your home state there in Florida was asked about liberal comments that Donald Trump is planning to persecute and jail his opponents if he's elected again. Here it is.
When Donald Trump was president, I can't think of a single prominent Democrat who was chased around, persecuted, prosecuted. It's funny to me to read these people and hear these people out there warning about all the horrible things they ridiculously claim Donald Trump is going to do if he becomes president again.
All right, he never locked Hillary up. Trump never did any vengeful acts in his first term in office. So why are these questions now, why are they surfacing again?
Because they want to make Donald Trump this villain. You know, they have to figure out how do we, you know, continue to make him the villain that's going to make people fearful of a Trump presidency. They don't want you to go back and rely on your own memory to realize that even when the riots were happening, he didn't send out the military, the National Guard or anything like that. He didn't. And they have no evidence to back any of this up. And so my hope is that people actually go and read what he actually did in these times. That's not who Donald Trump is.
Yeah, now Philadelphia radio station WURD announced Sunday they would be cutting ties with host Andrea Lawful Sanders after she said this in an interview with CNN.
Okay, so the White House sent the questions to you ahead of the interview.
Yes.
Okay.
I got several questions, 8 of them, and the 4 that were chosen were the ones that I approved.
So does the firing of WURD radio seem to like diversity, equity, inclusion at work? I mean, what's going on here?
I looked that network up, that radio. The whole thing is a DEI project. But what they are doing to this journalist, radio host in particular, is throwing her right under the bus. They know good and doggone well that they are accustomed to getting questions from Democrat, leftist politicians. It was the norm. That is the norm of their culture. That's why she had no problem doing it. They're throwing her under the bus, in my opinion.
All right, finally, here we got a minute left. The New York Post reports House Democrats are launching a united effort to vote against a Republican bill that would require voters to provide proof of citizenship to cast ballots in federal elections. Proof of citizenship. They say it puts an extreme burden on countless Americans of color. Now, they didn't say what color in order to vote. Keisha, can you speak to that claim?
An extreme burden on of the colored folk. This is nonsense. Who does not want American citizens to vote, and for you to be able to prove that you are voters? There are many Black Americans, I'm sure that's who they were talking about, and Hispanics, who want voters to show ID and be a citizen. We do not want, not that I can speak for every single Black person, but most Americans, regardless of color, do not want non-citizens to vote. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with you. The voting we've got to keep that pure. Be sure to visit Keisha online at KeishaKing.com and online at I'm Keisha K. It's always a pleasure to have you with us on Victory News. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Mike?